Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the next episode of the Magento Fireside Chat. We're still in our testing tools series. This time we have Allan and James both spent some time with Behat and especially how to use that with Magento. And yeah, I'm excited to find out more about that. So go ahead, please.
Yeah, so hi all. I think probably it's worth starting off with what BDD actually is, which is where Behat and Phpspec actually help us out. So before we share any screens and start doing some code, we'll go into what actually Behat is, or BDD is, sorry. So Behat is really a software development practice that emphasizes development through an example-based conversation. So it's all about finding the business value and being able to communicate that a lot easier. So we don't write unit tests as such, we describe behavior of the system, which is where Behat comes into play. So Behat was a tool that was originally developed not for Magento. It passes a file, a Gherkin file, which is all human readable examples. So when we use BDD, we actually talk about examples instead of saying, right, we're going to upload a CSV file because it solves this problem. We actually go into what the problem is. We ask our customers, our stakeholders, can you give us an example? Can we go into that a little bit? And those feature files actually become executable specifications that we can run repeatedly. So it's a freebie that we get from Behat being able to do some regression testing. It falls a little bit into the mentor work that we got showed last week, where it uses a WebKit driver, but Behat uses Gherkin and Mink, as well as a lot of other drivers, to actually power a web browser to interact with web pages. And the real value is that we're writing our Behat feature files before we even get into any code. So we're in the red-green refactor loop. We're writing failing tests or failing scenarios. We can then jump into Phpspec, which allows us then to describe at a lower code level. So do you want to fire away with what Phpspec is, Allan?
Sure thing. So Phpspec is a development tool derived from BDD or from a specific TDD technique called spec BDD. And basically what it does is it enforces that behavior of writing tests first, but through describing the public properties of an object or a method. So instead of doing very specific unit tests that are very narrow, we're describing how the public API of the object, how the object should behave, how it should interact with other objects and with the system. I've been working with James helping out the MageSpec, the MageSpec project, which is basically an extension of the Phpspec tool to give it a context within Magento. So what MageSpec does is it takes care of handling the autoloaders, and one of the nicest features is does a lot of code generation for us. So we start by describing and creating our specs, for example, for a model or a helper, and we start describing the test. And as soon as Phpspec detects that model or that specific function is not present, it's going to take care of generating that code for us. So it's our testers is what is driving the design of the code as one of the things. So basically the flow is describe, implement, and then refactor, right? I don't know what else to say. Do you want to add anything, James, to Phpspec?
No, I think you summed it up really well. It helps the developer keep the focus on what the behavior of their code is meant to be at any one time. So you're focusing really on, right, this method should be doing this when I give it this, instead of what I found with unit testing. It was more, what am I testing? I'm in this low-level unit. How am I going to do it? And losing scope of business value. We build software to add value to people's lives, to companies, customers, and Phpspecs help me do that. And with the great work that Allan and Shane and lots of other people are putting into MageSpec, it's becoming a tool now that works with Magento in such a really pleasing way. As Allan was saying, we get automatic code generation. So all of a sudden, we can describe a non-existing module, and all the code is generated for us. We don't have to leave our CLI, it's just built, which is really great. And one of the limitations of MageSpec, which is the extension we've built to help Phpspec work with Magento, Allan enabled code pools, so it was specified just to support local code pool. That is gone. It works great. We can use community core and local, and MageSpec's aware of all of that, so it's really, really good. So I think it's probably time where we share an IDE and we can start showing how to use it. So let me share PHP Storm. Hide that. Where's PHP Storm gone? Cool. So the first thing that we need to do to actually bring, well, obviously we need a Magento store, but we also need Composer, because Composer is the easiest way to actually bring in and manage dependencies. So you can see we've got MageTest Behat extension and the PHP extension, which will bring in for us Behat and Phpspec, so we don't need to worry about that. I like to include PHP to spec expect because it's an easier assertion language. It's more human readable. We say I expect this to return as opposed to PHP unit of asserting values. And the important part is actually the auto load. This is the bridge between Magento, Phpspec and MageBehat. It actually allows us to know where files are and gets pulled in so that class Mage, for example, Mage.php is available to us. So once we've actually gone through and done a Composer install, which we've already done to save time, we end up with the vendor and bin directory, so we can run Phpspec. We could also run Behat. I've just aliased the commands for ease of use. The next important, or two important files that we need to include are a behat.yaml. So by default, Behat won't have any awareness of an extension. So we're using Behat 2, where it's default extensions, and we just pull in the extension. All of this is documented on the GitHub pages in case anyone gets lost. And the next file is phpspec.yaml. So again, we load the extension, and this time the extension's got some configuration values. So we can say we want all of our specs to be prefixed with the word spec. Where is the actual source code? So where is Magento's source for where we're going to put these files? Where should we put the spec files? And the great work that Allan put in was code pool support. So we can now specify community or local. Once we've got them in place, running Phpspec, we've got the ability to describe blocks, controllers, helpers, models, and resource models, which Phpspec wouldn't know about before. And one of the great features with Behat is that we've got step definitions. So instead of having to write our own step code, we can say I can open admin URI, I'm logged in as, I am on page, I go to page, the cache is clean, I clear the cache, the following products exist. The last one's really great because we can actually set the system up into a state we're aware of. So it's not only products, but we've got fixtures. The fixtures are being worked on at the moment to make them easier to use, but in its current incarnation we can do, we can create orders easily, we can do products, and we can create users. So it just allows us in our start and stop scripts of Behat to actually set the system state up so that when we put this onto a continuous integration server, a staging server, wherever we run it, those values are there ready for our test to work on. So what do you want to do now, and should we start with some features?
Yeah, let's start writing some features.
Let's do it. So if we create a new file, we'll call this one, it's probably worth, do you want to explain what the module is that we're going to develop?
Yeah, so I don't know if probably some of you saw a tweet that I posted a few weeks ago that I was having a lot of problems with one particular payment extension. So one of the things that I decided to do as an example is redo that extension completely open source and with testing. So this extension is a payment gateway for Chase. It's pretty popular here in Canada. And so it's basically your straight credit card processing gateway. It has all the basic operations, refund capture, authorization, void and cancellation, which I'm currently working on. There's a GitHub repo under DMAC Media for this extension, and I'm currently working and trying out the process of writing and completely writing the extension from scratch with Phpspec. So it's a good exercise for, and hopefully it's going to be a useful extension.
So what I'm doing is just writing or describing some behavior, really. So in an ideal world, what we practice at Invika or Session Digital is that we go through some BDD practices. So we do an impact mapping session where we actually understand, like, what does the business actually want. So you know you want this amazing e-commerce store, but let's break it down into manageable chunks. Let's find out, is checkout as important as maybe another part of the system? And from that, we take it into feature mapping, where we actually break down each part of each key section from the impact map and work out more granular what they actually require. It helps us create a product backlog. And then we go through example workshops where instead of just requirement gathering like we would do in Waterfall, we actually go through examples. So, right, when I do this, what will I do? And we capture that in Gherkin syntax. So this is what we're writing at the moment. So the feature definition at the top of the file sets the scene. So we know this is related to Chase payments. So in order to pay for an online purchase as a customer, I needed to be able to use Chase as a payment method. Now we need to create some scenarios, so some real life examples of what's going to happen. So a customer can use Chase as a payment method. And here we're using one of MageBehat's inbuilt step definitions where we're going to set the state of the system up. So we can say, given the following products exist, so we'll do SKU 1, 2, 3, name, test product. Just align that a little bit. And this is one of Gherkin's example tables, which is a really powerful tool because this indicates a loop. So we can go over what we're adding in here in quite a nice way. So given is what we actually, it's setting context to what we want. So we're saying, given the following products exist, when is the behavior, basket, and then is the assertion. So given the products exist, when I add to basket, then I should be able to use Chase as a payment method. We'll add one more scenario in, which is Chase can be configured by the admin. So given the Chase is installed, and I try and configure, so now it's again, what are we trying to do? What do we expect? And we can test this. This is a repeatable test. So if we run back into, let's make sure can everyone see the screen still?
No.
Screen's probably the easiest option. Cool.
There we go.
So if I now run Behat, it's trying to actually execute the Gherkin. So that feature file is now being parsed and evaluated, and it's going to tell us what's working, what isn't working, what work do we actually need to do. So it's great. So we can see that, well, my colour scheme's not great, but we've got a sort of green colour. So it's actually installed some products for us. We've now got in our database a product of 1, 2, 3 test product, but it has no concept of when I add to basket, then I should see. But Behat's really kind and told us that this is the code that we actually need to implement. So let's take the first one, and we put that in our feature context. I've already gone ahead and configured this slightly. So instead of extending Behat context, I've brought in the Magento context and extend it. I've also used Mage so that we've got access to that. So if we add the snippet in that it suggested, it should tell us in a moment that it's a pending exception. So I've already got, this is one of the limitations with the fixtures that we've got in their current state. They're not very good at cleaning up after themselves. So in the Mage Manager repository, or the Magento, our repository, sorry, for MageTest, there's a manager GitHub repo that's got all the extra work in place for that. So I'll just change that to 1, 2, 3, just for an example. But we can see straight away that it's going away, talking to databases, and theoretically should be setting the state correctly of the system so that we can implement some of the tests that are going to help us ensure the behavior of the system's working. So we can see we need to write a pending definition. So what we can do now is actually, we're skipping ahead slightly, but we are limited a little bit on time and whatnot. Do you want to jump onto my machine, Alan, and we can show how we start the process of using Phpspec?
Sure thing. Yeah. Let me establish a connection.
Excellent. So what I'd normally do is I'd write all the features for the part of work that I'm working on at any one point in time. I'd then go through and write the step definition so that each one of them failed, and then jump into Phpspec so that I've got no tests or descriptions of behavior. I've then got enough description of behavior so that it's all red. Jump into Phpspec, start describing core functionality, run Behat, and hopefully as we complete our Phpspec, so red, green, recycle, we're then back to working features. So we've completed that behavior and we can move on to the next task.
Okay. See if this works.
Nope.
There we go, I think. Ooh. That's a terrible color scheme.
Yeah.
Okay, let's give it a second to see if it syncs. Okay, I think I have control.
Yep.
I do. Okay, so we don't have the base of the extension or anything like that on this installation, correct?
That is correct.
So I can just start by, actually I haven't tested that feature yet with Phpspec. Describe. And we're going to try to describe the model. In this case, we're going to try to the payment method. So we're going to do chase payment tech, I guess. And the nice thing about this is that MageSpec follows the Magento coding naming standards, right? So for example, for the extension names, it has to have the vendor and the extension name. Otherwise, it's not going to work properly, and it's going to throw an error. And let's call this method. And now that's going to generate a spec file under our, which should be, actually we can just do get public chase which is just basically the skeleton for the test that we're going to run. And one of the things that is automatically added to each spec is checking that the actual class exists. So that's the initializable function, right? So we're going to proceed to run, actually try to run Phpspec, which should throw an exception saying that the, oh,
Cannot redeclare class spec.
that's him.
Yeah. See if we can fix it. App code. Modules. Good, it didn't run it.
Yeah. Sorry.
Let's just dump the autoloader.
Nope. It's interesting.
Yeah.
Can we double check?
Phpspec.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, spec, public app code. That looks okay.
Yep.
DMAC. Chase. Let's just try describing test. It's really deleted.
Yeah, I think there is a problem with the autoloader. Can we review the composer file just to see?
Yeah.
Public app, co-local community. Shouldn't technically be. Oh, but wait, we're not adding the specs to the autoloader.
And will result having public/app as a separate item here make composer find the files twice? There is no public app code pool, right?
No, there is not. And since the spec is outside of the public directory, we should also be adding spec to the autoloader. Let me just, I have another project here. Cat composer JSON. Actually, no, we shouldn't be adding the spec. I'm wrong on that.
Yeah, just okay, let's try. So the PSRO MageTest. Source. Okay. Okay, where are we? It might just be my virtual machine. Let's if we use my host machine, it should be okay.
Let's give it a try.
Yeah. So what did we describe? Grab your command. So it was dmac. Oh, I don't want to do that.
There we go.
Stupid. Okay, cool. I'll let you take back over.
There we go. Okay, so let me get back to and okay, so where are we right now? It's PHP is not finding the actual Magento class or the model class, so it's giving us the option of generating that class for us. So we click say yes, click enter, and there we go. So now we should be able to take a look at the class.
It's okay. Shall we open it in Phpstorm?
Please, yeah.
Okay.
Just give it a try on Phpspec.
Have you still got control of?
Think so. Nope.
Can you Alt-Tab into Phpstorm?
No, I don't think Alt tabs work. You should be able. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
Okay.
It had locked me out for a second. So public app
Code.
community dmac. And this is where we're talking about what the work Shane did was actually enabled module generation, whereas previously that all it'd do is create the files. So we've now technically got a working Magento module. It will be registered by Magento because it's in app Etsy modules, and we've also got the structure to work from. So it's eliminating a lot of the manual steps that we need to go through. We don't have to dig out our snippet of code for how we do config.xml. We don't have to worry about all of those manual steps that are repeatable. Phpspec, the tool, is driving us forward. So I'll let you take back over. So
we get empty class. So now what we can start doing is start modifying our specs or defining our specs and defining how we want that specific model to behave, or how we're expecting that model to behave. So I'm going to go really quick and create a couple of quick specs for this particular method. One of the nicest things about payment methods is that they have a lot of public functions, and so it's very easy to use Phpspec to define a payment method. So let's say we want to make it extend, show extend, whoops, extend base.
I think this is where Phpspec's really great, because if we were using PHPUnit, we could still come up with names for the test that are pretty descriptive, but we're already thinking now, right, it needs to extend, so this class should be extending. So using it should sets us in the right mindset.
Type, and we can just do memory serve, right? Should be mage payment Model method CC. Here we go. I think I have that right. Let's do another one. So, oh, what was that? So, part of the Phpspec is the way the tests and the specs are described, which is a very simple and descriptive language for the function names. So another thing that is required for a payment method would be the payment code, right? It gets added to the specific payment method. So let's set a test for that. It should have payment method. And this should actually, oh, one important thing to notice about the way the test is built, when we say this inside the class, we're not referring to the actual MageSpec class. We're talking about the object. So in this case, this represents the method.php class inside the DMAC extension or the DMAC chase extension. So when I'm going to say this, I'm going to this. Let's call it get code. Would be the right method, and get code should return. Let's call it DMAC chase. Correct.
And this is our assertion, so it should return. It's not asserting true, it should return. It's what we're expecting, which is really cool. It's human readable.
So now, James, if you want to take this back to the console, so we can run action. Yep. And if we run, PHP, whoop, you run it.
You want to run it? It seems to lock me out at times. So I've got all a fancy alias file. So if you just do phpspec-r.
Okay, let's try that too. I'm lagging a little bit, so let's try this. Nope, I don't have control anymore.
Okay, do you want to kill TeamViewer and I'll take over and you can tell me what to type?
Sure.
Let's see if that improves it.
Kill it. There we go.
Excellent. Let's see if I can gain control again. There we go. So if we do phpspec run.
Yep.
So it's great. What we've got there is a failing instance. So we're not actually extending the correct class. But what's really interesting is Phpspec's gone in there and it knows in that class that there's no getCode method. So instead of just failing and screaming and shouting at us, it's actually been a helpful tool and allowing us to create it. So if we select yes.
No, wait.
Oh, sorry.
Well, okay. So here's the reason. GetCode is actually, or it should be, a method inside the payment method abstract, if I'm not mistaken. So
okay, let's get rid of that.
Yeah. So if we go to the actual class, let's remove that. Let's change the extends class from model abstract to the actual payment method CC.
Okay.
I think so, yes.
Yeah.
I think I have my double check my the spec class because I might have that wrong. I think I forgot to add the method. Yeah. Oh.
That wrong? Mage payment.
Payment model payment. That should be correct. Are we loading the correct project? We should, right?
Yeah, I've got it wrong. It's method. Mage payment model method.
There we go.
Hey.
And okay, this is very interesting, right? Because this is one of the problems with Magento code being tightly coupled. Can you open the actual payment class, the one that we're extending?
Yep.
So there should, if you go to the abstract, there should be a get code method, I believe, since that actually threw an error. So scroll down or search for, yeah, there we go. So right now what is throwing the error is the helper payment, right? Because there is no, it's tightly coupled, so it's not able to, the test is not able to create that instance of the helper. So James, what we can do is, can we copy that function to the actual class, payment method class?
Yeah.
And let's just remove the call to the helper and leave it like returning the error in plain English instead of using the translation. So, yep. Just remove the call to helper.
There we go.
Perfect. And now if we run the test again, that should pass. Oh, sorry. Yeah. So by default, none of the payment methods or the abstract class doesn't set up the class variable, the private variable that we need, code. So if you go back to the class, and this time add a protected variable called code. Code underscore code, sorry.
Underscore code, sorry.
And we make that equal to the MacChase. Yep.
Yay.
And there we go. I have 3 examples and 3 passing tests. And we can continue developing our extension by describing and creating the specs, right? There are tons of things that we can write specs for checking if the method can authorize, can capture, can avoid payments, writing for the actual, there are a lot of functionality or variables on a payment that can and should be tested, capturing partials, doing refunds or partial refunds. All those could be separate tests that we can be testing. Correct?
Indeed.
Okay. So I don't know if you want to keep going with the Phpspec, or we can go back to MageSpec maybe.
Yes, so maybe let's describe some more behavior just to, shall we highlight maybe some of what Vinay spoke about last week with mocking and the issues that we face in the MageTest world around that.
Yep.
It's probably not so much related to this module as such, but it'll be good to highlight some of the ways around what we actually do, or what we're trying to do. So I'm not sure what's a good. So function, it should, let's say it's configured, there's some area of configuration that we need to use mage get model. So it should return a value from the database. Not the greatest of names, but for this example it'll help us. So we've got a public method of get database value. Should return Fireside, because that's the configuration value for this store. So if we go back to Phpspec, it's telling us that the method doesn't exist. So we create it, and now we failed because it's expecting to get Fireside back, but it actually got null. So if we jump into our code, we've got the method that was created for us. We can do value equals mage get model core config and get data, I don't know, store. have to be real, we're just return value, run Phpspec again. This time, we're falling into the trap of actually talking to databases. We're talking to external systems that we shouldn't know about. We can't reliably expect or know or shouldn't know about MageGetModel. It shouldn't talk to external parts of systems. We should be able to mock that, and we can't mock MageGetModel. It's a static method. It's too tightly coupled to the system. So one way that we've used to try and get around this, and it's a little bit strange because the way Magento loads files with its constructs, there's no true dependency injection. So what we do is use an adapter so that we can move code that we don't own. So we don't own Magento's code. So we can create, or the way we've been doing it is to create a model adapter folder. Inside the adapter, we'll create a file that we can use where we're abstracting away all the Magento code. We're going to use it as an adapter. We're going to be able to pull this in via the constructor, but we're going to be able to change it at runtime. So we can swap out the instance of this class with a mocked version of it. So we'll call this either base adapter. Just to make sure we follow the convention, it's dmac Jace del adapter. And instead we'll create a new public function called get database value. Turn mage. Okay, and now back in our payment method, maybe not there. If we do create our own constructor, pass in an array of services, we can then easily check what's being set at any one time. Database. If it's set in the array that we're passing in, we'll call it we'll just recycle it. Otherwise, we want to create a new version, a new instance. What is PHP Storm?
You have a typo in the first line of that if statement. There's
Ah, yeah. Good spot. We'll set the database adapter to be new dmac database adapter. So now when we construct the model, we can either via Phpspec send in a mocked version, or we can just refer to using the default. So back to our spec file. What we now need to actually do is construct the object, and we do this using Phpspec's let function or let method, where we're going to create or tell Phpspec to actually mock this object for us. It's not really Phpspec, it's more Prophecy, which is the mocking engine behind the scenes. So it's dmac chase model database. We say this be constructed with array base adapter. Right, database adapter, yeah. So now when Phpspec constructs this spec, it's going to say, right, you're now my mocked object. So we can do some pretty cool stuff. We can say, if we pass adapter in, say adapter, I call it, get database value will return. So this time we're setting the state, we're setting the value we want. Hopefully, we get an error. I believe it's because I'm running it on the host machine that doesn't have access to the database. Potentially. What we'll do is just to show how it works. Maybe not. Sorry, that was my fault. So what we were doing still there is actually relying on the coupled code. So we can do value equals our adapter that we've created. We can call methods. So that way, we're actually not invoking Mage directly, but we're acknowledging that it isn't our code. We still rely on it because for our e-commerce store to work, we need Magento and its methods and its database values. But we're going to move that out of our code. So we own this model. This is our model. We can do our own logic, our own business rules. It's formatted for our domain, but we're going to pass it in via the constructor. We're going to say we need a little bit of this database, a little bit of this config, but it's not a Magento model. It's our model that's working with Magento. Because we're using the mock there, we know what value we're expecting. So we don't care really that Magento is going to return us a string value of Fireside. That's not what we're testing. We're not testing that Magento is working. We don't really care that MageGetModel is functioning correctly, because if MageGetModel is broken, we've probably got bigger issues where we've broken Magento. We're more concerned that getDatabase value and any logic that we apply to it, if this is wrapped in an if or some more complicated business rules, we're concerned that our unit of code is working and returns business value. So if we run that again now, we've got rid of our error, which was my mistake, and we can actually see that that's correct. So if we just simulate that, so value, we always want database value to be Fireside, and if it's not Fireside, we want to see how an exception's thrown. So let's describe the behavior first. So it should throw an exception if Allan is returned. Sorry.
You have a couple typos there, though.
That's okay. Maybe not with should. So now we want to see what happens with exceptions, because we are testing that our business logic's correct. So again, we need the adapter. Not there though. This time, adapter get database value will return Allan. So we can use some of Phpspec's really cool features. So what we want to do is this should throw We'll call it a runtime exception during. So we're actually talking this through as we would do. So it's going to throw the exception through get database value. We run that now. So this time it was saying, right, I'm expecting Allan to be returned to me. I've got Allan, but I didn't get an exception. So we need to take care of that in our code, which we can do by if value equals Allan, throw new runtime exception. Wrong person. We run that this time. So we're actually not caring so much about how we're talking to the database and the methods involved in communicating with the database. We're more concerned about what business rules we can apply, which I think is quite a cool feature.
Yep.
I'm not sure, is there anything now that you'd like to show a little bit more?
No, I think we can maybe move to if anyone has some questions.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
Yep.
Let's jump back to the guys. So a few issues, a few live demo problems, but hopefully you can sort of see the value of BDD and where that comes into play. So we're testing behavior at all times, and we're describing more as we would speak to our stakeholders. So if I went away and spoke to Mr. Client, it's what should happen during this process. If I do this, what should I get? Which I think is a really powerful way of working. So have we got any questions or?
So far, there are no questions in the Q&A tool here.
Good. I think it's quite good to see how, especially Behat, is another way of working with Mentor. One of the features of Mentor that you showed last week was how it could take screenshots of the different resolutions. I think that's a really powerful tool. Behat can take screenshots. I've not seen how it can take screenshots by setting the resolution size, but it's a different way. I think each of these tools that we're going to look at over the past week and the weeks coming up have got the place. Any tool that promotes good testing practice is worth its weight in gold. And what we're actually seeing is different implementations. So if you are an agile house that believes in BDD and user stories, then these are great tools for you. If maybe you're inheriting some other code or legacy processes where you're using unit testing and you've got a combination, then what we saw last week with the unit testing and mocking in unit is a great resource to use as well. So it's important to use the right tool at the right time.
Yeah, definitely, yeah. So thank you very much to both of you. That was an excellent presentation. I love watching people code. That's really nice. Even if there are problems that come up, I'm glad that you guys figured out how to work around that. So yeah, that's great, and I hope that people will pick that up and will contribute back. Behat, MageBehat and MageSpec are both on GitHub, right? Ready to be
That's correct.
used.
Yeah.
And are they part of the Magento composer thing, or how do you pull them in? Or are they on Packagist?
They're on Packagist, yeah.
Okay, so
And
Composer simply knows about them, right?
Indeed, and as long as you include the auto load and you don't have problems like we had today, it should be a seamless process.
Okay.
I think one important thing to mention as well is that, especially with MageSpec, we've got an open ticket, which is a call for feedback. The only way that we can improve these tools and have people like Allan, Shane Auckland over in the UK improving these tools is if we know how people use them and how they want them to be used. So if anybody's got any ideas, throw a ticket on there and let's really make all of the tools and Magento better.
Yeah. And I think showing how you guys work with that in a presentation like this one helps people to pick that up and start using them by themselves. Actually, I have
Definitely.
one question about how you guys actually use Behat in your project. So, I mean, one of the ideas of Behat is actually that you have like even less technical product owners, project managers, or whatever write those specifications in the Gherkin language. Is this actually something that's happening? Do you see non-developers prepare those Gherkin test cases?
We do indeed. It's I think we're quite lucky at Invika because everybody adopts the BDD process. But what we find and what we're finding more often now is that the business analysis are very good at writing Gherkin. They know what examples to write out, and where the developers are working with the BAs to actually write them. So very little time's added to the project, converting a BA's interpretation of Gherkin to a developer's version of it. But I'd say probably on 90% of the projects I work on, I don't write the Gherkin. It's done by a great team of BAs.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah. Allan, can you share that same experience?
No, honestly, I'm starting to introduce a little bit more of testing here at DMAC. We're working on getting Phpspec running on every single developer in the company. I'm still trying to convince management that Behat is going to be a good addition. So we are not there yet. We're getting there, but we are not there yet.
Yeah, I think Behat is a great tool, and I love to use that. But I experienced that writing test cases in what form ever is, in many cases, just something a developer does, hopefully does. And it's hard to have a non-developer introduced into that world because, like, from a project manager's or project owner's perspective, the requirements are basically defined in a different language that's not even Gherkin. It's just a ticket or a user story sitting somewhere, and filling that gap would be perfect. But I feel it's going to be hard in our teams.
Yeah, I think that's where not using Behat, well, you don't have to use Behat. Using BDD, which is a set of processes, really helps bridge the gap, because the gap that you were talking about, where a developer writes their own language and clients speak another, we need to bridge the communication gap. So we all need to speak the same language so that when we're working on projects, there's no confusion. And at Invika, we solve that problem by impact mapping. We do feature workshops. We do example workshops. So instead of writing huge, big documents for requirements, it's just the requirements are built up of examples. We're probably really lucky because we do work in such an agile way. But I suppose that's just a process that evolves over time, and the value that it adds is just worth its weight. It's a pleasure to work with the process that way.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, that sounds great. Okay, so still no more questions from outside. I guess it's true for you guys too. If people have questions, they probably can reach out to you via Twitter or email or ping you. And so yeah, we have some more topics lined up for the following weeks. So stay tuned. We will announce the sessions on Twitter probably like a day or two before they actually happen. We try to stick to Thursdays, probably like 9 a.m. Pacific time, and make that like a weekly thing until we run out of topics in this testing series. And I'm sure we will probably come up with some new topics after that. Yeah. So again, thank you very much for preparing this, for doing this, and I'll see you guys around next week.
Thank you. Have a nice week.
Take care.
Bye bye, everybody.